The wind that night cut through the Montana plains like a sharpened blade, driving needles of snow across the open land and turning every breath into ice. The world was white, silent, and merciless. No sane soul would be wandering the prairie on Christmas Eve yet. A young woman and a small girl stumbled through the drifts as if pushed forward only by desperation. Sophia's boots were cracked, her shawl too thin for the winter night, and her breath came out in ragged clouds. She held her daughter's hand tight, fearful that if she let go even for a second, the blizzard might swallow the child whole. "Mama, my feet hurt," little Hannah whispered, her voice trembling more from hunger than cold. "I know, baby, just a little farther," Sophia murmured, though she wasn't sure she believed the words herself. There has to be a place, somewhere. And they had run all night, away from John, away from fists that smelled of whiskey, away from a life that had never been theirs to live. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew she could not stay where she had been. Hours earlier, she'd heard rumors whispered at the station. A small Apache settlement out on the open plain, not far. Just follow the old wagon trail west. There's a man there who runs a little bakery. A bakery in the dead of winter seemed impossible, almost laughable. But when a mother is cornered, even the faintest rumor becomes a lifeline. Snow blinded her, but somewhere through the swirling frost, she saw a faint orange glow, smoke rising from a chimney. "Mama, look." Hannah tugged her sleeve and pointed. A small wooden building stood against the pale horizon, its windows fogged up by warmth inside, its door lit by the glow of a dying lantern. Beside it, a lone figure sat slumped in the snow, head bowed, dark hair tangled by the wind. It was a man broad-shouldered, wrapped in a blanket that had slipped halfway off. A half-empty bottle lay in the snow beside him. Sophia tightened her grip on Hannah's hand. Approaching a drunken stranger in Apache territory might be dangerous, but the cold was steady and merciless. She could feel her fingers going numb, her lips stiffening. They needed warmth. They needed food. They needed help. As they drew closer, Hannah suddenly stopped. Her eyes were fixed on the open doorway of the bakery, where warm light flickered over trays of cooling bread. The smelly, yeasty, sweet, comforting hit her like a memory she never actually had. And then, in the way children do, pure and unfiltered, she stepped forward toward the stranger in the snow. "Sir, can I have a little bit of bread?" she asked softly. The man stirred. His eyelids lifted just enough to reveal deep-set amber eyes, Apache eyes, tired and rimmed red from drink and grief. He looked first at the girl, then at Sophia standing behind her, wind-battered and pale. For a moment, he didn't move or speak. The wind howled over them, blowing snow across his boots. Then faintly, hoarsely, he managed, "Who are you two?" Sophia swallowed hard. "Travelers. We have nowhere else to go. If you're looking for trouble, we'll leave." But Hannah tugged her hand free and stepped even closer to the stranger. "Please, sir, just a small piece," she whispered. The man stared. His breath hitched, his shoulders stiffened, and something flickered across his face pain. Recognition. Memory. Slowly he pushed himself upright, swaying slightly as he rose. In that flicker of lantern light, Sophia saw his features clearly for the first time. A wide scar along his jaw, ash burns on his forearms, the look of someone who had buried too much. He wasn't dangerous. He was broken. And somehow, that frightened her less. "Bread," he murmured, almost to himself. "A boy once asked me that." The wind paused, as if listening. He blinked hard, clearing the fog of alcohol from his eyes. Then he looked at Hannah, recently looked at her. A tiny girl, cheeks blue with cold, hands shaking, staring up at him with the same longing he once saw in his own child. "Come inside," he said at last, his voice rough but steady. "Both of you. You'll freeze out here." "No, no, sir," Sophia protested. "I didn't come to beg. I came to ask if you need help in your bakery. I'll work for food, for a place to stay, just until I can take my girl somewhere safe." He gave her a long, unreadable stare. Then, unexpectedly, a faint chuckle escaped him, dry, worn, not unkind. "I didn't say you'd just sit and eat," he muttered. He opened the door wider. Warmth washed over them, like mercy itself. The scent of fresh bread, wood smoke, and something cinnamon-like spilled out into the snow. Hannah rushed inside first, drawn by instinct. Sophia hesitated on the threshold, unsure if she should trust this stranger. As if hearing her fear, he spoke again, softer than before. "Ma'am, it's cold enough to kill a grown man tonight. Let the girl warm up. The rest we'll sort out in the morning." Sophia met his gaze and saw no malice, only emptiness, softened by something that looked almost like hope. She nodded faintly and stepped in. He followed, shutting out the blizzard with a firm push of his hand. Inside, the small bakery glowed with amber light from a coal stove. Loaves of bread sat cooling on the counter. A kettle hissed softly atop the stove. The man set the bottle aside, straightened his shoulders, and spoke with more clarity than Bauer. "My name is Samuel." He looked at Hanano rubbing her hands near the stove, and then at Sophia. "If you're willing to work, you can stay. For tonight, at least." Sophia's breath trembled, not from gold this time, but from the first fragile flicker of safety she had felt in years. "Thank you," she whispered. Samuel nodded, his gaze lingering a heartbeat longer on the little girl who'd asked him for bread, the first child's voice to speak to him since the night he lost his own. And just like that, on a frozen Christmas Eve in Apache land, 3 broken lives stepped quietly into the same warm room, and nothing in their world would ever be the same again. The bakery was small, barely more than a single room and a lean-to kitchen. But to Sophia, it felt like stepping into another world. The storm beat angrily against the windows, yet inside the coal stove hummed with a steady glow. The scent of warm dough clung to the walls, softening the edges of everything. Samuel moved quietly, almost cautiously, as though unsure how to behave with company after so long. He took a tin mug from a shelf and filled it with warm water from the kettle. "Here," he said gently, handing it to Hannah. "Warm your fingers first." The little girl cupped the mug with both hands, as if it were a treasure. Steam rose around her cheeks, painting them pink again. She sighed in relief, curls falling over her eyes. Samuel watched her with a look that flickered, half hurt, half tenderness, before he turned away, perhaps to hide it. Sophia stood behind her daughter, still wary. Her hands, blue with cold, remained folded idly at her waist as she waited for Samuel to explain himself, or maybe to change his mind. "You can sit," Samuel said, nodding toward the long wooden work table. "Ain't much, but it's warmer than standing." Sophia hesitated. She'd learned the hard way that accepting kindness from a man often came with a price. Still, Hannah needed warmth more than she needed her mother's fear. So she pulled out a chair and sat back straight, eyes alert. Samuel tore a piece of fresh bread from a loaf, coarse golden, still steaming, and set it before Hannah. The girl's eyes lit up. "Mama, can I?" "Eat," Sophia murmured. "Slowly, darling." Hannah obeyed, though slowly lasted only a few seconds before hunger won out. She devoured the soft bread, like a child who had forgotten what fullness felt like. Samuel watched silently, arms crossed, leaning his hip against the counter. In the quiet of that small bakery, a heavy truth hung in the air. He had once watched another child eat bread the same way. Sophia felt his gaze shift to her. "I told you," she said quickly, chin lifting a little. "I didn't come here to beg food off you. I can work. I can scrub floors, wash dishes, bake if you teach me. I just—" Her voice cracked. "I just needed somewhere my girl wouldn't be hit anymore." Samuel's expression softened. "What's your name?" he asked. "Sophia." Her voice steadied. "And this is my daughter, Hannah." He nodded. "You come far?" "Montana," she said. "That's more than 300 miles." He let out a long exhale. "On foot?" "Not all the way. I bartered rides when I could. Walked the rest." "Because of the man you ran from?" Sophia said nothing, but that silence was answer enough. Samuel didn't press her. Instead, he took the empty loaf pan from the counter and began wiping crumbs into a small bucket. His movements were slow, deliberate, almost ritualistic. "You said you came looking for work," he said at last. "What kind of work did you do before?" Sophia wrapped her hands around the warm mug, letting the heat sink into her bones. "Housekeeping, sewing, some cooking, nothing special." She bristled. "I work hard. I learned fast." His lips twitched. "That wasn't doubt, ma'am. Just thinking what jobs I got round here." Sophia lowered her eyes, embarrassed. She had forgotten how to interpret a man's tone without expecting the worst. Samuel wasn't like John. Not in his voice, not in his posture, not in anything. He moved toward the back shelf, grabbed a small pitcher, filled it with milk, and poured a tin cup for Hannah. "Drink slow," he told the girl, tapping the rim lightly with a finger as if speaking to his own lost child. Then, without ceremony, he handed Sophia the heel of a fresh loaf. She blinked. I told you, I don't want charity." He raised an eyebrow. "You do realize you're starving them, don't you?" Sophia stiffened. "I said I can work." "You will." Samuel's voice grew firm. "But nobody works on an empty stomach." He pushed the bread closer. And something in her broke not in pain, but in relief. She hadn't been spoken to with simple human respect in years. Her hands trembled as she took the bread, broke off a piece, and tasted it. Warm, soft, safe. She hadn't tasted safety in a long time. Hannah finished her milk and crept to Sophia's side, leaning against her. The girl was already half asleep, exhaustion pulling at her eyelids. Samuel cleared his throat. "There's a cot toward the back. Not fancy, but it's cleaned. The girl can sleep there tonight." Sophia stiffened again, protective. "And me?" Samuel pointed to the other side of the room. "You take the bedroll by the stove. It's warmest there." "Where will you sleep?" she asked. He shrugged. "I'll make do." Sophia didn't argue. She gathered Hannah in her arms and carried her to the cot, tucking her beneath a rough wool blanket. Hannah murmured something unintelligible before drifting fully to sleep. When Sophia turned around, Samuel was sitting at the work table, elbows on his knees, staring at the floorboard as if replaying memories no one else could see. He didn't speak until she sat down opposite him. "If you stay," he said quietly, "you'll help with kneading, baking, selling when folks ride through. The place runs better with more hands." Sophia nodded. "I'll do it." "And the girl?" he asked. "She helps with chores. She's a good girl. Careful. Won't get in the way." Samuel's gaze softened. "I don't mind her being around." She noticed then how empty the bakery felt until Hannah had stepped inside. The warmth didn't just come from the stove. After a long silence, Samuel rubbed his forehead and sighed. "Just for a little while," he said almost to himself, "till you get your strength back." Sophia nodded, grateful beyond words. But she knew, and perhaps he did too, that once someone gave you shelter in the middle of a blizzard, once you shared warm bread on a cold night, that bond didn't fade quickly. And as the storm raged against the windows and the bakery settled into calm, Sophia realized something she hadn't felt in a long time. They were safe. Just for tonight, they were safe. And sometimes on a night like Christmas Eve, that was enough to change a life forever. Morning crept into the bakery with a pale, wintry light, soft enough not to wake the child still curled up beneath the wool blanket. The storm had passed, leaving the prairie glazed in white, snow stretching out like an untouched sheet of paper. Inside, the coal stove still burned warm, its glow flickering over racks of cooling bread. Sophia rose first. Her back ached from the hard floor, but she didn't complain. It had been warmer than any place she'd slept in weeks. She studied Samuel quietly as he stood at the counter, sleeves rolled up, mixing flour with water in a wide wooden bowl. He worked with the steadiness of a man who had done the same motion 1,000 times, though weariness shadowed his eyes. "Morning," he said without looking up. "Morning," she replied, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "You sleep all right?" "Better than most nights." He nodded once, as if that answer satisfied something he wasn't ready to say aloud. The smell of rising dough filled the room, warm and comforting. It reminded her of a life she once imagined she'd have. Simple, quiet, a life stolen before it began. Samuel pushed the bowl of dough toward her. "Your turn." "My turn always, to do what?" she asked. "Knead," he said, motioning with flour-coated hands. "You said you wanted to learn." Sophia hesitated. "I'm afraid I might ruin it." He cracked a faint smile. "If it burns, we don't sell it. Simple enough." She stepped forward. The dough was soft, warm against her fingers, sticking to her palms like something alive. Samuel watched for a moment, then gently adjusted her hands. "Not like that. Use your weight. Lean into it." She tried again, pushing harder. A puff of flour rose into her face, speckling her hair and lashes white. She coughed, fanned the cloud away, and heard a soft chuckle. Her eyes shot up, surprised. Samuel's shoulders shook slightly as he turned away, trying to hide a grin. "You laughing at me?" she asked, half offended, half amused. "No, ma'am," he said, still grinning. "Just haven't seen anyone fight dough like it owed them money." It was the first time she'd seen him smile, really smile, and something warm stirred in her chest. Before she could answer, a small voice piped up behind her. "Mama, why are you hitting that dough?" Hannah stood rubbing her eyes, hair sticking up in every direction. The blanket trailed behind her like a cape. Sophia placed her floury hands behind her back. "I'm helping Mr. Samuel make bread." Hannah blinked at the half-formed loaf, then at Samuel. "Is she doing it wrong?" Sophia gasped playfully. "Hannah!" But Samuel only shrugged. "Everyone starts somewhere." Hannah giggled and wandered toward the counter, fascinated by the bags of flour and jars of honey. She reached for a wooden spoon, knocking over a small heap of flour that splashed onto the floor. Samuel didn't scold her. He simply stooped down, brushed the flour into his palm, and tossed it back into the bowl with a quiet, "Close enough." Sophia watched the interaction, her heart tightening. John would have backhanded Hannah for less. Here the child's mistakes were met with gentleness. By midday, the bakery was alive with movement. Sophia shaped rolls with more confidence, though some came out crooked. Hannah hummed while sweeping the flour she herself had spilled. Samuel lifted trays in and out of the brick oven with practiced precision. When the first batch cooled, he handed Sophia a small, crusty roll. "You made this one," he said. She broke it in half. Steam curled upward, carrying a scent so warm it nearly brought tears to her eyes. It had been so long since she tasted anything she made with her own 2 hands. Anything that wasn't rushed or ruined by fear. "It's good," she whispered, after taking a bite. Samuel nodded once. "Told you. You learn fast." For a brief, peaceful moment, the bakery felt like a tiny sanctuary, carved out from the harsh, dusty edges of the West. Later that afternoon, Samuel sat at the small table eating a slice of bread, tearing it into small pieces as if lost in thought. His gaze was distant, drifting far beyond the walls of the bakery. Hannah wandered over, crumbs on her cheek, curiosity lighting her eyes. "Mr. Samuel." He blinked, returning from whatever memory he'd fallen into. "Hmm? Can I have a piece of your bread?" His hand froze. Sophia, wiping the counter, turned sharply toward them. She recognized that stillness, the way a person pauses when memory grips them by the throat. Hannah climbed onto the chair beside him, waiting. "Just a little piece," she added, soft as a feather. Samuel's eyes glistened. For a man who rarely spoke of his past, his face told everything. Pain, love, loss, and something dangerously close to hope. He swallowed hard. You remind me of someone." "Your little boy?" Hannah asked innocently. His breath shook. "Yes." "Did he like your bread too?" "He loved it." Samuel smiled weakly. "We'd sit just like this, him asking for a piece before it cooled." "What happened to him?" she asked. Sophia opened her mouth. "Hannah!" But Samuel raised a hand gently. "It's all right," he said. "He passed. A fire took him and his mama. I tried to save him, but the smoke came too fast." Silence settled, heavy but soft. Hannah reached out and touched his hand. "I'm sorry." Samuel closed his eyes, as if that small touch steadied something inside him. Then he tore a piece of bread and placed it in her palm. "Here you go, little one." Hannah beamed and ate happily, kicking her feet beneath the chair. Sophia stood behind the doorway, one hand pressed to her chest. She had heard everything. And for the first time, she saw Samuel not as a stranger or a man of Apache blood feared by many, but as someone whose heart had been scarred just as hers had. Maybe even worse. Their eyes met when she stepped back into view. She didn't speak, but the look she gave him said more than words could. "I'm sorry. I understand. You're not alone." He lowered his gaze, but a new warmth lingered between them, fragile and unmistakable. As evening descended over the snowy plain, laughter began to fill the bakery, soft at first, then fuller, rising like the bread in the ovens. For the first time in a very long while, three people who had lost too much began to feel, in the simplest moments, the shape of something they hadn't dared to dream of. A home, a place to belong, a small rebuilding family tied together by warm bread and quiet kindness. And though none of them spoke it aloud, each one felt it growing slowly, gently like dough rising beneath a warm cloth. The weeks that followed settled into a gentle rhythm, moan so natural, so quietly comforting, that even Samuel didn't notice how quickly his home began to feel lived in again. By dawn each morning, he was already kneading dough, muscles working steady and sure. Before Sophia arrived, the bakery had been silent, the only sounds the scratch of the stove and the occasional creak from the floorboards. Now, as he worked, he could hear soft footsteps from the back room and the sleepy murmurs of a little girl rubbing her eyes awake. Hannah would wander into the kitchen, hair sticking up like wild prairie grass. "Morning, Mr. Samuel," she'd yawn. "Morning, little one," he'd say, nudging a cup of warm milk her way. She'd take it with both hands and drink while he kneaded dough, her tiny feet dangling from the stool, knocking quietly against the wood. The bakery didn't feel empty anymore. It breathed. Sophia came next, tying her hair back, rolling up her sleeves, already dusted with flour before she even touched any. She moved through the bakery with a steady grace, quiet, thoughtful, careful with every gesture. It was the kind of grace forged from years of surviving storms, both the ones outside and those thrown at her inside her own home. "Samuel," she'd call gently, "you forgot the tray near the stove again. It's rising too fast." And he would mutter under his breath, embarrassed. I meant to get it." She smiled at him in a way that warmed places inside him, he thought, had burned to ash. Business picked up slowly at first. Riders passing through would stop for a loaf, mostly because the smell wafting across the prairie was impossible to ignore. Then the townsfolk from the trading post 3 miles east began coming by, curious about the new woman, rumored to be working with the chief's Apache baker. Samuel wasn't one for idle talk, but Sophie, though shy, had a gentle friendliness that drew people in. Her bread rolls were smaller and softer, shaped with care, each scored with a tiny cross pattern, she said, helped the heat spread evenly. But everyone knew the real reason they were pretty, and people liked pretty things. Hannah helped too, proudly handing loaves to customers with both hands, saying, "Thank you for coming," in a voice that made even the gruffest cowboy smile. "Your little one's got charm," one rancher laughed, tipping his hat as he left. Sophia's cheeks warmed. "She tries her best." Samuel only grunted, though the corner of his mouth lifted. Little by little, coins filled the wooden cash box, more than they ever had since Samuel opened the bakery. The shelves emptied faster. The stove stayed burning longer. And the laughter returned to a place that had known only mourning and silence. Some evenings, when the work was done and the night set in thick and quiet, they'd sit around the small wooden table. The stove popped softly. The prairie winds moaned at the eaves. And inside, the three of them shared simple things: bread crusts, dried berries, stories about life before everything fell apart. Hannah asked questions, so many questions, and Samuel never turned her away. "Mr. Samuel, did you hunt buffalo when you were little?" "Only once," he said, stirring his coffee. "I wasn't very good at it." "Why not?" "Didn't much like killing things," he said, voice gentle. "But I liked making bread. That's what my mother taught me." Sophia smiled. "A fine choice, I'd say." "Safer too," Samuel admitted. And occasionally Hannah would tease him, sticking bouncy rolls of dough onto her cheeks like dimples and saying, "Look, Mr. Samuel, I'm a bread girl," until he laughed so hard the flour on his shirt puffed up into the air. It had been years since anyone had made him laugh like that. One night, a soft snow drifted across the plains, dusting the ground with a pale glow. Samuel stepped outside to check the bakery chimney, and when he returned, he found Sophia on the porch, wrapped in her shawl, staring out at the moonlit prairie. "You should be inside," he said. "Cold's biting tonight." She shook her head slowly. "It's beautiful tonight. Quiet." He joined her. The snow muffled every sound, even the wind. The plains stretched out like a field of diamonds under the moon. For a long time, they stood without speaking. Then Sophia said softly, "I never expected to find a home here." Samuel's chest tightened. "This ain't much of a home." She turned to him. "It is for me, for Hannah." He swallowed, unsure what to do with the heat rising in his chest. Sophia's voice trembled, but it wasn't fear, it was honesty breaking through old walls. I want to be part of your family," she whispered. "If you'll have us." Time hung still. Snowflakes drifted slow as feathers. Samuel looked at her, really looked at her. The way her lashes glinted with frost, the gentleness in her eyes, the bravery in her voice. She reminded him of the woman he once loved, and yet she was entirely herself, stronger, quieter, enduring. "You already feel like family," he said. Her breath hitched. A small, hopeful smile touched her lips. Inside the house, Hannah's laughter echoed faintly as she tossed to her little rag doll. And with that sound, something settled into place between them, natural as breath. Samuel exhaled, long and slow, letting the cold air clear the last shifts of grief from his chest. Next to Sophia, under the blanket of a western winter sky, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the loud, reckless kind, but the quiet kind, like bread rising in a warm oven. Life didn't magically fix itself overnight. Samuel still woke sometimes at dawn, with the memory of flames burning behind his eyelids. Sophia still trembled whenever she heard a man raise his voice outside the shop. Hannah still clung to her mother more tightly than necessary. But together, they were healing. Together, they carved something steady in the middle of a harsh world. They baked bread. They laughed. They worked. They shared the same roof, the same meals, the same small joys. And though none of them dared speak the word family too loudly, yet the truth was rising, warm and saucy, just like the dough on Samuel's work table. They were a family already. Fate had simply not gotten around to telling them plainly. But soon it would. And the peace they'd found would face its first true storm. Winter settled deep over the Apache plains, the kind of cold that stiffened wagon wheels and froze water buckets, solid by morning. But inside Samuel's bakery, warmth bloomed from the brick oven and the laughter of a small girl darting between shelves. Business was good, better than it had ever been. Riders stopped by for warm rolls. Families came for sweet loaves Sophia shaped with careful hands, and even the traders from town took notice. Life had softened at the edges. Too softly, perhaps, because trouble always came just when a person thought they might finally rest. It was late afternoon when the first warning arrived. Not in the form of a shout or a gunshot, but a distant noise carried by the wind. A horse stumbling, a voice slurring, bottles clinking. Sophia was kneading dough at the counter, sleeves rolled up to her elbows when she froze. Samuel sensed the shift in her posture even before she whispered, "No," under her breath. He followed her gaze toward the far road cutting across the white plain. A lone rider approached, swaying in the saddle. The horse looked half-starved, its breath steaming in the cold. Samuel didn't know the man, but Sophia did. Her hands went cold. "John." The horse nearly stumbled into the bakery yard before the rider slid off, boots hitting the snow with a wet thud. He was taller than Samuel expected, broad-shouldered, his coat caked in dust and bottle stains. John Harper, once a wealthy man, once handsome, now looked like a ghost pulled out of a saloon gutter. A nearly empty bottle hung from his fingers. "Sophia!" he bellowed, voice soaked in whiskey and rage. "Sophia, you get out here!" Hannah, startled, ran to her mother and clung tightly to her skirt. Samuel stepped forward, instinctively placing himself between them and the door. "Stay behind me," he murmured. John kicked the door open so hard it slammed against the wall. The bottle crashed to the floor, rolling in a lazy circle. "What in hell?" John spat, eyes adjusting to the warm glow inside. His gaze landed on Samuel, and he sneered. "An Apache baker? That's who you ran off with?" Samuel's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. Sophia stepped forward, voice shaking. "John, please, don't do this. Don't do this." He laughed, staggering toward her. "You took my daughter. You embarrassed me. You think I'm just gonna let that slide?" Hannah whimpered and ducked behind Samuel's leg. John's eyes latched onto her, like a predator spotting prey. "There she is," he shouted, stumbling forward. "Come to Daddy, sweetheart." He lunged for her, but Samuel moved faster. His fist connected with John's face in a single sharp blow, so quick it startled even Sophia. John crumpled backward, sliding across the wooden floor, groaning in pain. "You lay a hand on that child again," Samuel said, voice low and deadly calm, "and I'll put you in the ground myself." The room fell silent, except for John's ragged breathing. Outside, a small group of townsfolk had gathered near the window, drawn by the shouting. They whispered among themselves, "Isn't that Harper?" Heard he drinks more than he breathes. Poor girl, having to live with a man like that. Looks like he's lost every bit of sense he ever had. John raised himself to one elbow, blood running from his nose. His rage flared, but fear flickered beneath it. You think you can take my family, you filthy Apache, he slurred. That's my wife, my girl. She stopped being yours the moment you laid hands on her, Samuel growled. Sophia braced herself for the recoil, for the screaming, for the storm she knew too well. But this time, she wasn't alone. Samuel stood solid as a stone wall between her and danger. You don't love her, Samuel continued, his voice steady as the earth under his boots. You don't love your daughter. You only want the girl, because she's your ticket to your family's inheritance. Gasps rippled through the crowd outside. John's face reddened, turning almost purple. That's none of your damn business, he snapped. You made it my business, Samuel replied, when you came here drunk and ready to hurt them. John tried to stand. His legs buckled. He cast a wild, furious look at the crowd, at Sophia, at Samuel, at the child trembling behind them. You'll regret this. His voice broke. All of you. He staggered out of the bakery, snatched up his reins, and climbed onto the horse with difficulty. The animal snorted, unsettled by his weight. With one last hateful glare over his shoulder, John kicked it into a crooked run and vanished into the snowy dusk. When the door finally shut, Sophia collapsed against the counter, breath trembling like a leaf. Hannah clung to her waist, sobbing quietly. Samuel knelt next to them, his face softening in a way few people ever saw. He's gone, Samuel assured her. He won't hurt you here. Sophia met his gaze, eyes full of gratitude, fear, and something else blooming beneath the surface. Thank you, she whispered, her voice breaking. You saved us. Samuel reached out and touched her arm gently. You're safe with me, both of you. She didn't pull away. Instead, she let her hand slide into his, fingers curling as if holding on to the first solid thing she'd found in years. They stayed that way until Hannah hiccuped and whispered, Mama, is he coming back? Samuel's voice was firm, steady. No, sweetheart, not again. 2 days later, news came from a passing freight rider. A man drunk, wandering alone, had been found frozen near the northern border. His description matched John Harper. Sophia sat at the table, the newspaper trembling in her hands. She wasn't smiling, but she wasn't crying either. Instead, she exhaled a long, shaky breath, releasing years of fear with it. Hannah climbed into Samuel's lap without asking. Sophia let herself lean into his shoulder. For the first time, the threat that had haunted every dream was gone, blown away by the winter wind. And though none of them said it aloud, they all felt the same quiet truth settle inside the warm walls of the bakery. Their life could finally begin. For real. The year that followed was the kind of year folks spoke about for decades. Quiet blessings, small miracles, and the slow weaving of 3 separate lives into one steady fabric. Winter melted into spring, spring into the dusty heat of summer. And all the while, Samuel's once lonely bakery became the warm heart of the Apache settlement. With John gone, no shadow stalked the edge of Sophia's vision anymore. She walked easier. She slept deeper. She laughed not politely, not guardedly, but with the honest sound of someone rediscovering the shape of joy. And little Hannah, she bloomed like wild prairie flowers after the first good rain. Every morning she woke Samuel by tugging his sleeve. Mr. Samuel, the dough's ready for punching. Or, Mr. Samuel, there's a rider coming, he looks hungry. Soon she forgot the Mr. altogether. One morning in early fall, she trotted into the kitchen, hands on her hips. Daddy, that loaf's burning. Samuel turned, startled, nearly dropping the pan he was holding. Sophia froze where she stood, a cloth in her hand. Hannah blinked between them, confused. What's wrong? Samuel swallowed hard, throat tight. Nothing, little one. But to Sophia, the room felt suddenly full heavy with meaning, soft with unspoken things. She didn't correct Hannah. Neither did Samuel. From that day on, Hannah called him Daddy without hesitation, the way a child recognizes a truth adults take longer to admit. By late autumn, the bakery had earned a reputation across several neighboring towns. Riders from as far as 20 miles stopped by for Samuel and Sophia's bread-offed loaves, braided buns, and sweet rolls glazed with honey. It wasn't just the bread. It was the feeling of the place. Warm, honest, alive. Locals said they could hear laughter from the bakery before they even saw the chimney smoke. It wasn't the raucous kind found in saloons. It was gentler, fuller. The kind of laughter that softened a hard week or warmed a lonely rider's heart. Sophia ran the counter. Samuel managed the oven. And Hannah appointed herself greeter, sampler, and official taste tester, a title she took seriously. Sometimes customers left with only a single loaf, but spoke of the bakery as if it were a sanctuary. Word spread. Go to Samuel Carver's bakery. Feels like a home ought to feel. And for the three of them, it truly was. Snow returned earlier than expected, drifting across the plains in soft white sheets. The morning it arrived. Samuel stepped outside, watching flakes dance beneath the gray skiway. Sophia joined him, wrapping her shawl tight. Cold already? Colder's coming, Samuel said. She nudged his arm lightly. You sound like an old man. He lifted an eyebrow. I feel like one some days. She laughed softly, the sound misting in the cold. Inside, Hannah pressed her face to the frosted window. Mama, Daddy, the snow looks like sugar. Samuel chuckled. Only you would think of food first thing in the morning. The bakery filled with the smells of cinnamon and warm butter as they prepared the first Christmas loaves of the season. Customers brought pine branches, jars of jam, and knitted scarves as gifts. One old rancher set a carved wooden star on the counter. For the little family that saved this town's winter, he said with a wink. Sophia touched the star reverently. Thank you. Samuel stood behind her, pride swelling quietly in his chest. The night came softly, snow falling in gentle spirals, covering rooftops and fences with a fresh white blanket. Lanterns glowed outside homes across the settlement, strings of dried berries and cedar branches decorating every doorway. Hannah pulled at Samuel's hand. Daddy, hurry! The festival's starting. I'm coming, he said, slipping his thick coat on. Your boots tied? Yes. She lifted her foot proudly. The laces were a crooked mess. Samuel crouched and re-tied them properly. Little one, you'd trip over a loose leaf. Sophia appeared behind them, hair braided, cheeks pink from the cold. She wore a pale blue dress with simple embroidery. Samuel had seen it, drying by the stove earlier that week, but he hadn't realized it was for tonight. It suited her more beautifully than he could have said. You ready? She asked. Samuel could only nod. The three stepped out into the snowy night, hand in hand, walking toward the lights and music of the Christmas festival. People greeted them warmly. Some offered hugs, others small gifts. Children waved at Hannah. Adults waved at Samuel, the once quiet baker, now a respected figure. Sophia squeezed his arm gently. You brought us more than shelter, she whispered. You gave us a life. Samuel's breath caught. He looked at her in the lantern glow, snowflakes catching in her hair. You gave me something too, he said. Something I didn't think I'd ever have again. Before she could answer, Hannah tugged hard. Daddy, candy booth. Samuel laughed, a deep, warm sound, and scooped her up. All right, let's get the girls some candy. Sophia watched them, heart full. When he set Hannah down again, Samuel turned to Sophia, reached into his coat pocket, and pulled out a tiny wooden hairpin shaped like a bow. He'd carved it himself during late nights when the bakery was quiet. He lifted it gently to her hair. "For you," he murmured. "Thank you for walking into my life last Christmas Eve." Sophia's breath trembled, eyes shining. "I should be the one thanking you," she whispered back. Their foreheads touched, just briefly warmth against the winter cold. Hannah clapped her hands. "Mama, Daddy, look! Fireworks!" The sky lit up with crackling gold and blue, glittering over the snowy prairie. Samuel took Sophia's hand. Sophia took Anna's. Hannah took his other hand. A perfect circle. A perfect, quiet promise. No vows spoken aloud. No ceremony. But anyone watching them that night would have known. They were a family. Chosen. Created. Held together not by blood, but by warmth, courage, and a small piece of bread shared on a frozen night. And above them, the fireworks burned bright, like blessings written across the winter sky. In the quiet glow of that Christmas night, their little bakery on the prairie stood as proof that even the coldest winters can give birth to new beginnings, healing wounds once thought too deep to mend. And so, Samuel, Sophia, and Hannah lived on bound not by blood, but by the warmth they chose to share. A family born from courage, kindness, and a simple piece of bread. If you enjoyed this story, please hit subscribe, like, share, and leave a comment so I can keep bringing you more heartfelt tales. Thank you all for listening.